Hello and welcome to another edition of TPS Tech Talk. Today, it may be a limited crowd, just myself and Keith Patterson. Julie Shaw may join as well, but we'll keep rolling, see if she pops in midway here. So for this hangout, we wanted to just take a look at ways technology can sort of supplement research, specifically research that is tied to primary sources. I have a current graduate project going on that sort of spurred this hangout. So gonna run through kind of what I've done and look at some of those different pieces, what technology is sort of built into this research I've been doing, and then just move on. And Keith and I might have a few back and forth, and then if any questions come in as well, if anyone's watching, if you have a question, feel free to jump on. Oh, there's Julie. We didn't know if you'd recognize. Are you hearing us?
I am. I'm in kind of a noisy spot, so hopefully I've got my headphones on and that'll not be too bad for you guys.
No, sounds perfect.
Hey, Julie.
Hi.
So I was just saying, Julie, that I'm doing a research project right now, and that's kind of what prompted this, to take a look at some technology and things I'm building around this project, around primary sources and critical thinking. And so I'm going to do a screen share and kind of show some of those components, and then we can just chat about any of it, or if other things come to mind, feel free to jump in. Again, totally organic with this, so do not feel bad about interrupting at any point. If a question comes up, or if you have another thought, another tool that comes to mind, at any point, definitely jump in.
Okay.
So, go ahead and share my screen here. So I'm starting, this is just Google Drive, but which is becoming a very common piece of technology, but it's the way I organized everything, which without being able to organize online like this and use a folder structure to kind of keep data in order, it would have been really tough. So I have just some real basic, my data collection folder, and we'll take a look at some of the pieces in there, and then data analysis. And so again, just as sort of a step one, it's really nice to have Google Drive just as an option to keep things organized. The basis behind the project was to basically look at primary sources and how they affect critical thinking, or if they do. In particular, I was looking at what they do to someone's ability or sort of if it prompts them to question more, infer, or increase their inference skills more. And then also the third one is empathy, whether it sort of tied them into a situation and made them more empathetic towards a situation. Those were kind of the three pieces of critical thinking I was looking at, even though, again, critical thinking is this pretty broad concept that is defined 1,000 ways, but those were kind of the pieces I took to look at. So a primary source like this one, let me zoom in a little bit. I had a bunch of people sort of look at this source and do a quick analysis, something that for those involved in TPS, we're very comfortable taking a primary source like this and using the analysis tool, which we've all seen, that looks like this, right? And then I just had people go through the process of make some observations of this source. A lot of things came out, just looks cold, or I see men, I see women, I see looks like they might be on a boat, things like that. Make some reflections, and then question the source. And I got a wide range of stuff that came through in these analysis. Did it with about I think I had a total of about 15 or 20 people that participated. So pretty small data set, but it was still fun to be able to use this tool. They jumped online, did their reflections, and then were able to email it to me directly. So that was nice. So basically the second half of that, after they analyzed a source, they then were popped over to a Google form that I made use of. And so that's sort of another piece of technology that I relied on a lot for this project. That primary source was obviously sort of related to immigration. And so I was looking at, did analyzing that historic primary source of this concept of immigration affect the way they looked at a current day piece of media or image, also tied to that theme. So this is obviously a pretty immigration-related source as well. So I had them just provide thoughts. I said provide 6 thoughts, which they were able to enter directly in. Here are my thoughts directly into this form, and then they submitted it. And so then I had those 6 responses about sort of where their thinking was. So again, I did that with actually 3 different sets of sources. Some people only analyzed the current image. Some analyzed the primary source and then moved on and also analyzed the image. So I had this compare and contrast of whether that primary source analysis really affected the way the thinking happened. So did that with a number of sources. Again, got the data compiled. So that they entered into that form got pushed directly into one of these spreadsheets. I'm not going to open these because they have some actual data in them and some user emails and some things. But basically, I was able to pull all that in automatically just through an email that had a link to that Google form. And then, in the end, I had this sort of, oops, I'm not logged in, of course, so won't be able to look at it. But, back to Google Forms to basically do the analysis and collect all the data. So any other thoughts, I guess, at this point, I know that's super fast. We're going to try to get through these, don't want this to run any further than like 20 or 30 minutes. So that was a crash course in kind of my initial setup. And I know Keith has a little more info because he actually was one of the participants that did some of the analysis and things. And then I'm going to jump in and look at sort of the next step, which was trying to visualize and make sense of some of the data I found. But I wanted a chance to chat if any thoughts came up prior to getting to that point.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor.
So,
go ahead, Julie.
No, well, I'm assuming then that they were your participants were adults, since Keith was one of them.
Yeah, I tried to keep it
correct?
in the education sort of realm. At first I said teachers, but it kind of grew to be a little bigger than that. But definitely all adults, yeah.
Okay.
As this phone rings, the questions I had, and I actually participated in helping with some of the testing. But I was wondering, before I kind of talk about my own experience, did you have any issues with the people being able to use these technology pieces? I mean, did you run any tech support or anything of that nature that might be something that you learned through the process?
Not any huge issues. I mean, I would say, about 80% of the people kind of got that data straight back, and I knew that it had happened and that everything seemed to work okay. The other issues that came about weren't so much technology related as they were just sort of process related. Okay, I did the analysis, I sent that, now hold on, where's that link to get back to the second step? And so more probably my own process that wasn't quite tweaked. The technology, I didn't run into, honestly, any issues really. Being that I stuck to Google sort of things mostly, I think helped. A lot of people are familiar with how to make use of some of that stuff, so it wasn't as big a, I would say everybody that did one probably has filled out a Google form at some point. So.
Yeah, just knowing it's been years since I've done a research project back when I was in the late 90s, kind of getting old now, but in computers we didn't have these options, and I know having to do all this on paper and compile this stuff, and then having to data enter all of it and do it that way, just walking through the process, I mean, was just a piece of cake, and I know that stuff spits right back into the spreadsheets, and then you makes that that whole organization thing. I can tell that was much better. So I mean, that's just a nice use of the technology.
Yeah, it was the automation. I think that's the key. It's a lot of things happened that I didn't have to have a part in. I also did some just audio interviews. You saw some of those. Jump back over here. Some of these audio clips. Did those by phone, emailed those directly into Drive. Like that all kind of was just ready. Then I had that there. But yeah, the automation that the technology afforded me was the only way that I probably could have done this in a single semester, worth of time. Yeah. So
did you have any tool to pull the text from the audio?
Since I only had what you're looking at here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's all I had to deal with, and it was only 6 reflective thoughts in each one. So I just did it. I just sort of transcribed it myself, just because it was a smaller set. If it was heavier amounts of audio that I wanted to get transcribed, I probably would have thought about using some service or something. So.
Right. I also have a question about just how you did it. So did you use the library primary source analysis tool for the historical sources, but for the contemporary sources you did the Google form, or was it a mix? Or
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I only used the analysis sheet for those that I basically called this or those that did the analysis first of the historic source, the priming group. Let me stop sharing since we're still chatting. So I basically call them the priming group, and so for them, I use the analysis sheet. For the modern sources, I just used the form and just said provide 6 thoughts. But I suppose actually I don't see why you couldn't also use. In fact, it would be interesting to also use that analysis sheet for those current images. I don't obviously we work with TPS, we work with the historic stuff, but I don't know if anyone's ever tried. I'm sure in the classroom there's some examples of people that have used that for other current modern day sources, and I don't think that tool. There's no reason that tool has to be tied to historic sources. I think it would have worked.
Mm-hmm. And how were you able to have any like how did you pull the data then from the analysis tool? So it was digital, so that was helpful, but was there any kind of streamlined process you used to get that into the spreadsheet?
So, and this is more process of this, but so the priming or the analysis using the analysis sheet, that was sort of secondary and just for the thought process. That none of that got transcribed or brought in as data. The only data I worked with was how people responded to the current day image that was tied to that theme.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So it was really more get yourself in the right mindset by doing this analysis, or I shouldn't say right mindset, because it was the study was to see what mindset that put someone in. But yeah, so that data, but it is nice because I'll actually include that in in my final sort of project and say, look, here's some examples of some of these analysis sheets that were really nice because they just could email them straight to me, and now I have them, in a digital form. Even though they didn't become part of the data set, they're still all accessible, and I can review any of it. So.
Okay, great.
So the last couple pieces that get even a little techier that we'll take a peek at. So once I got sort of all the data together, basically, and this is sort of actually the current step I'm at. This is I'm not actually done with the project, but I took that data, sort of broke it all down, and then used Google Charts. I feel like a Google fanboy here, since I'm so far 100% Google products, but they make good things that are really useful for this kind of thing. So I made use of these Google Charts that it's sort of part of their developer package. So they let you really tweak with the actual code and stuff that's creating these. So again, you can see they have all these different sort of examples of different charts you can make use of. I didn't get too crazy. I just used the sort of a basic column chart, and so they give you some examples. I knew I wanted to sort of look at two different a comparison of those that did the analysis and those that didn't. So I said, oh, okay, here's a chart that actually looks like that'll represent my data pretty well. So I click on that, and it actually bumps you over to this platform called JS Fiddle, which is basically exactly that. It allows you to fiddle with JavaScript. And it's not nearly as complicated as it seems. I mean, it shows you exactly what, here on the left, what data is producing this result image. And so just to give you an example, like I could, if I tweak this first one, which is at 0.25, that's representing this first piece of data. If I go, let's just make it something outrageous. I changed that to 10, and then I'll hit run, and you'll see, there we go, and you see the effect there. And so, I was just basically playing with this data, retitling it, changing the X and Y axis labels and that kind of thing. And then you're able to save these and also just output them. And so the final step, and where I'll kind of end with where I'm at, is I created a lot of these to represent different data. I have this website that I've used for a lot of my work, and so I basically just embedded these charts here, and this will become kind of a visual supplement to the final project. So you guys can kind of see a sneak peek of this final data. This actually has not been seen because I just uploaded these over the weekend. But so then you have the result of, based on the data I got, those that were primed with the analysis when it comes to questioning, it went from 42 questions asked without it to 51. Inference went up a little bit. The empathy was pretty tough, and I was understanding that was going to be a difficult one to sort of, judge and be objective as to how to analyze that. But so that one went the other direction actually. And then I also broke it down by the different actual themes. So I had a pair of images around race and civil rights, and so you can see there's that. And I was able to import and embed the audio clips just as examples. Just as an example. So those are there, and this is still it's a work in progress. I'll still have some other stuff to include. This one really, the one related to immigration that we actually looked at, out of the data I got, only 4 questions came about without the priming of looking at this source here. And for those that looked at this source first and then looked at the current day image, a lot more questioning seemed to happen. So that was interesting. But the next one on technology and innovation, quite the opposite. Then the group that didn't have the priming question a lot more. So I'm assuming this will be inconclusive data probably in the end, but it was fun to go through the process for sure.
Cool. Now, did you said that was the Google Charts was part of the developers package? Does that mean it's not available to everybody?
No, it is. It's more kind of their developer end that they let kind of people play with things that they're developing on, but it's not behind any door.
Okay.
In fact, let me add the showcase, and I think oh no, I didn't add it here, but I can. I'll grab the link here and share it just in case anyone else wants access to it. Any other thoughts? Well, I'm going to throw this up in the showcase app here.
Yeah, Taylor, I had not seen those results, and I've not played with that JS Fiddle thing. That's interesting. We'll have to kick that around the office at some point. I thought that was interesting. And what I really found interesting was your results that you did get some conclusions out of it, because I know the audience you were working with probably is really tough to draw some conclusions, because you had some real ringers in there, I know. So, so that was interesting that some of those things came out so strongly.
It was definitely my first jump into research, and kind of on this scale, and I found out why it's really hard to do really good research, because I had to. The lines were blurred on a lot of things. Where if you were doing a serious research project where you're really looking to make use and publish some significant findings, then I would have had to been much more careful with my sample size. And some of you did a number of analysis of a few sources. I would have probably had to have you just stick to one. And there was a lot of things I had to tweak just to make it happen. But I learned a ton through the process, and still am. It was really interesting. Just the literature review itself, and finding how hard it is to find research on what critical thinking even means. What primary sources can do to affect capacity for critical thinking. There's very little available to even look to to make any sort of conclusion. So that was my finding, even beyond the actual data, was probably that there's room for research around critical thinking and primary sources and technology for sure. That that combination of things is really limited when you look at the literature. So.
I know we talked early on that when you were thinking of doing this, that I think Julie, you can speak up if you know otherwise, but it seems to be a bit of a hole kind of actually proving that this works. I mean, we've all seen it hundreds, if not thousands of times. I mean, with all the people, all the teachers we work with and the students we work with in the TPS program, but it's very difficult to actually prove it. I mean, aside from real anecdotal stuff we see or hear from the people we work with. I mean, we work with the regional program here, and we see a little bit with we've seen some assessments, some of our regional partners, where they've said definitely that us coming in and doing work with their teachers has really improved their social studies assessment scores. But it's a real tough thing to make that direct correlation. Kind of a brave move on your part to try to do that and figure out the best way to kind of tackle that. So it'll be interesting if you do see some conclusive evidence that there's a way to go a little further with that, or yeah.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Wonder like looking at that with students as well. I think it's and like maybe even does it fall out in like certain themes? It kind of goes one way more than the other. But very interesting.
Yeah, the thematic part was something I actually going in hadn't even considered looking at, but I think that actually is one of the more interesting things that I found, is that there was such a significant difference based on they were all visual images. Then you could even go to different media types, looking at audio or video or whatever, but just within images, when you broke it out thematically, the way people analyzed and discussed an image of historic European immigrants versus civil rights on a schoolyard versus the other one was technology and sort of an early airplane. So just in that variation, it was crazy to see the way that the people's thinking sort of changed just thematically. So really fun, but it was also for a class, and I'm excited it's getting close to being done.
So kind of on that thing, well, one, I just wanted the final project is looking pretty slick. I hadn't seen that part. So I'm assuming you just have to embed those modules into your onto your web page, which I'm assuming is probably fairly easy knowing Google, right?
Yeah, I mean, so, and Keith, I've sort of promoted. Now I'm a Google fanboy and also Squarespace. So the platform that I built my site on, Bearded Skeptic, which has kind of become my portfolio, that is done through Squarespace, and it's so easy. They have a little drag and drop module. Where are we at? We're at about 25 minutes, so I don't want to look at that. But anyone, if you have questions about using Squarespace, feel free to shoot me an email or ask me, because I could go on about that too. But yeah, really, really simple. They have, I want to embed some code. They have like these base modules that are really easy, images or text or whatever. But then they have one for just sort of embedding some code, and I dropped it in, copy the code from JS Fiddle, paste it, and tweaked it a little bit, but then it displays right there, and really no coding or expertise in web development needed. Honestly, they make things pretty simple.
I know some people who might end up watching this might glaze over at that, but really it's just a matter of copying and pasting for those who haven't done it before. But
yes, your Control-C, Control-V sort of finger strokes become really well worked. That's a whole nother study to see the volume of CV or command, depending on if you're on a Mac, but it's like that's increased a lot lately with how the web works now. There's a lot of copy and pasting. Things have gotten easier.
It's like, are you going to end up with like a claw hand with just the three keys that you always get? I just one final question for me. I just was wondering. So you did this very nice heavy integration with technology in your research. And since this is a college project, have you had any idea what your colleagues are doing? I'm sure you got pulled in to do some data collection for them as well.
I saw some proposals of things. but nothing after that. So I don't know. A lot of it's a lot of educators and teachers that are actually on the ground in the classroom that are in the pro. I kind of am one of maybe only two or three that venture outside of being in an actual K-12 classroom. So a lot of the stuff I saw was going to be around how is technology affecting my students. A couple projects on how are iPads affecting students' learning. So a lot of that kind of thing in the classroom. But of course, I have much more access to adults in the TPS world than trying to get to students. So, but yeah, I'll share some of that too. I think some of that will be interesting. Some of the other projects that come out of the classroom.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. We're right about at the end. Julie, any other thoughts or comments? Thanks for jumping in and trying one of these. We're going to try to, do these as often as we can or want to, or topics present themselves. So feel free to be involved in any of the future TPS Tech Talks that happen.
I thought it was really interesting, so thanks for sharing. And I didn't know about Squarespace, so I'll check it out.
There you go. I swear I should let them. Actually, they do have like referrals. I should make sure I'm getting my $5 per referral or whatever it is. All right. Well, thank you both for joining, and thanks for those that watch this after the fact. Hope it at least provided a few new ideas of how technology can really supplement research, specifically research around teaching with primary sources. So thanks. We'll sign off.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.